And even when I became the science person, associate director of science, they weren't that interested in. They were very elated. I shouldn't say it that way, but it seemed like they were very elated when smoking rates in African American teens started climbing, because that's the story that would
fit what everybody's mentioned.
Yeah, would make the news. Mm-hmm. So that was just like, I am so through. By that,
right. Like, let me just go.
I'm tired of talking about the deficits and the things that are wrong.
Right.
We spent years talking about how to do what we call the Invincible Woman Study, which was going to be, how do we look at protective factors? Mm-hmm. How do we see, there are many women who have negative outcomes, but there are many women in the same situation who do very well. And what is it about those women that works? We could never figure out. That's why we started looking more at, another reason why we got interested in ethnography, because we thought, well, at least we can begin to glean something about how it works well as how it doesn't work.
Right.
If I still had another study in me, it would still be that one, because I still have not figured out the methodology. There's more and more opportunity now, and things like Ad Health over the years provide more information that could be mined to try to do some of that work now.
Right.
But it was still the same idea of I'm prevention. I'm in protection.
Right.
Health protection. I don't want to know the risk factors. I want to know how
do we fix this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you're at Morehouse, right, and you're building this center for health disparities. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so that actually grew out of my husband's work. And we still have a little friction about film. We even last week it came up as a. Anyway, one of the main things that he did was he contributed. He was the person who did a lot of the HIV minority prevention activities.
Right.
A lot of his work was around community-based HIV prevention in minority communities, as well as taking care of the Tuskegee syphilis study participants. But one of his passions in life was to develop diversity in public health, at the academic side of public health.
Right.
Because he was like only the third person to graduate with a PhD in epi.
So this
third African American.
Efforts like the Survivors Club and things like that. That's where this was coming out of. Really saying like, how do we, increase the pipeline of, diverse students who are coming in and keep them, in these programs and help them thrive, right?
Yes. Okay. So one of the first things that he developed when I first met him, he was working on developing opportunities for undergraduates with Morehouse College of Spelman, the HBCUs in general, to get exposed to public health, specifically to epidemiology and biostatistics.
Okay.
So, like I said, CDC was a place where if you had an idea and you could convince people and you got money, you could run with it.
Gotcha.
So he was able to get funding for a summer program that expanded into what's now the Public Health Sciences Institute. But initially it was a program to recruit students in their junior or senior year or just graduating to spend 8 weeks as an intern in epidemiology. And they had 4 weeks of didactic training in epi and biostat and public health. And then they are assigned to work with a senior or not so senior person, first at CDC. So by the end of the summer, they had to produce a paper. They had to participate in a research project with this CDC person and produce a paper and present it. And it did lead to this pipeline over the years, and I think it's been at least 25, 30 years almost now. So it started with maybe 5 students, but like the funding grew and the support grew for it, and it became a year-long program so that most of the funds go to summer training, but there are also funds for training people throughout the year and expanding to develop coursework, at Morehouse Spelman, and so that a lot of people learned about public health as a career and epi. And other parts of CDC started putting money into it. So environmental health became part of it, and maybe occupational health. But, people realized, oh, this is a way that we could get a pipeline going. Okay, so that was going, and he was scheduled. And the other thing that he did at one point was he took a year or two off to develop the MPH program at the Morehouse School of Medicine.
Okay.
So that, well, of course, we were all faculty there at the beginning. I called in all his friends and people to teach there.
Right, pulled up that alumni phone book, right, and started making calls.
Right, yeah, so we all did some teaching there as they were developing their, faculty and recruiting people in to teach. And then, I don't know how this happened. He decided that it was important to set up a system where there were multiple MPH programs at HBCUs. So he got more funding and worked with other HBCUs that were developing MPH programs, and set up a network. So this is really what he's very proud of. He really has been able to get a pipeline going through masters and Morgan State, doctoral, DRPH. So, and the public health sciences program also expanded. So for several years they focused on recruiting Native American students. So we had people from, I can't remember, Navajo and other places. Different.
Right, all the different tribes and reservations, right?
Yeah, from where we recruit from the tribal colleges and Hispanic speaking institutions. So it was still primarily African American, but there was this clear sense of we are going to make this happen because we see the disparities.
Right.
And these are the populations where the disparities are. So these are the people that we need to train.
They need to be trained to be able to lift up the solutions in their communities, right?
Yeah, and it's, I don't want to put this, okay, most of the people who are professionals are totally clueless about the health of communities and how communities function and how do you get to improve health in community.
Because that's not where they came from.
Right, exactly. So there's always been this, conflict between academics of health prevention and health promotion and the real world.
Right.
And so we needed people from the real world who could come in and inform the academic and the professional side of things and sort of take on what made more sense.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, so I forget how many students there. Maybe they may be up to 50 people a year that go through this program at this point.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, and other institutions joined in, like Carnegie Mellon started funding slots, and Washington University would fund slots. So there'd be students assigned to these different places. Anyway, he was supposed to retire from CDC to develop the research portion of it, because we had the training portion, and we wanted to develop a research portion on health disparities. Now, this is his version. So he put in his retirement papers, and CD said, no, you have the time. You put in your 35 years, and you're just, you are an essential personnel, and you cannot retire right now. And it was like, oh, so we were going to retire around the same time. And he'd been no longer than I had,
And they were just not having it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally. They would not accept his retirement papers. And
I didn't know that an employer was allowed to do that.
Well, they made him an offer. He
refused,
which was like, when you're in the middle. I think, I can't remember what was going on at that point. And there was still HIV stuff going on, Tuskegee study stuff, and so. Oh, and I think that was part of it. After a presidential apology for the Tuskegee study, they set up a funding for an ethics program and other things. Right. And so he was very much involved in developing that as well. So there was stuff that was, I guess, still developmental.
Right.
So I was the one who ended up going to Morehouse to set up the research center.
Gotcha.
Because
they decided to stay on. Yeah. Right, and they were anticipating that this program was going to be going, right? So somebody had to go.
Yeah, and actually I took a year off after I left CBC for personal reasons. I went to take care of my mother. She was very ill, and my daughter was in middle school and needed all of my time. Mm-hmm. Middle school was real. I had learned
middle school's tough.
One of the things I had learned from being the associate director for science was how important it was to support middle school students and for parents to be there. So I was, gung-ho about being a volunteer at the school and all that stuff. So I agreed to work part-time to start setting up this Health Disparities program, and then eventually got sucked into full-time and writing up the grants for it and stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, it was my center, because I did all the work,
all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and got the initial grants and worked, to get this big grant from Kellogg Foundation and shaped it, and then retired a few years later and walked in and thought it was his center. So there was some friction there for a few years.
Yeah.
And excuse me. We finally got on the same page about what we were doing, the kind of research we're doing, but Morehouse has wonderful students, wonderful faculty, I shouldn't say terrible administration. They still have problems thinking, Morehouse is for men. And a lot of the money that came in from places like Kellogg Foundations were going out to communities,
right?
Which is not what Morehouse thought the money should be going to.
Right.
They wanted research coming in
the center, right?
To stay in the college, And we were supporting student researchers, we were supporting faculty researchers, but it wasn't just at Morehouse. And we were funding community organizations, and we actually were working with historically black colleges in Savannah, Georgia, and Albany, Georgia, and Fort Valley, Georgia. And they just kind of had a little problem writing up the contracts and seeing the money go out to other places. And they kind of had a problem seeing me as the director. I mean, after all, I was not Morehouse man.
Right.
And
it's not like you were from another HBCU either.
And I didn't even go to Spelman. You're not even part of the family.
But
I was only an in-law.
And you were at Wellesley. Let's not even.
They didn't even, that didn't even compute. I think people thought, a lot of people probably thought it was a Spelman. But Bill, was the star. I mean, he literally was. He was the one who had brought this program and developed it, and he was the Morehouse man. So it just got a little bit intense and tiring, personally and professionally, always sort of trying to explain to them that I did have a role in this.
And again,
I did bring a lot of ideas. Yeah. I was the one who got the grants. Exactly. So when this opportunity to come to UNC came up, I thought, excellent. At first I couldn't believe it, because I knew a lot of people who graduated from UNC. A lot of people at CBC went to UNC.
Okay.
The Epi group at UNC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. Big pipeline. So, and everybody who ever went here loves it.
Right.
So I always heard these wonderful things from everybody about UNC. But, and Bill didn't, he came to get whatever the important alumni award is that they give every year. I'm sorry.
I should know this, but I don't.
Anyway, he came up to receive an award, and I came with him. I thought, I'd been here once, but never paid any attention. But the campus was just so beautiful. It was October, it was gorgeous.
I was gonna say, you were either here in October or April.
Yeah.
There's the,
And then we came back for commencement. And,
I don't wanna go any.
oh,
Good.
That's.
oh, that's cute.
oh, it's Vic. He probably thinks we're finished. Yeah, can you call me? Let me see. So anyway, and Bert was here, and he had actually been talking to me about coming. Hi, hold on. And, you know, I thought, okay. But when I came here, I met Miriam was doing all this great work, and other people in the department. I thought, this is a gorgeous
There's something
place.
about this campus.
And I knew a lot of the people in the department already, you know, and I thought, maybe I should take this seriously. This is a place where I can work independently and be
Right.
myself. And yeah, so that's how I ended up here. You know, after a while I said, let me call Bert up again
Yeah,
and tell
yeah.
him I'm really interested in getting, you know, being interviewed and considered to come here.
Gotcha. It's so funny. You know,
And plus Vijaya was here. We hadn't
oh,
worked
so
together.
Vijaya had already been here.
Yeah, Vijaya had
Okay,
been here for
okay.
several years, and we hadn't worked together, you know, since the
Right, since way back at CDC.
2000s or something.
Right.
And so it would have been a chance for us to almost pick up where we had
Right.
left off. And so,
Right. And then when you got here, that was a lot of the work that y'all kind of picked
yeah,
up
we
from
got to
that. Mhm.
sort of collaborate and stuff.
So, you know, of the work that you did when you were here at UNC, you know, obviously I knew you as faculty,
Mhm.
but, you know, what was kind of the work that you were doing when you were here, you know, before we crossed paths?
Let's see. The first couple of years, I wrote grants to set up a center here, another research
Right.
center for health disparities, and never got funded. And I always believe that. It wasn't so much I was in competition with places like Michigan, as it was I was in competition with places like the Morehouse School in Madison.
Right.
You
I
know?
mean, you know, the center that you had just built, right?
Yeah, the medical school had gotten funding.
Oh, to do
And-
disparities work.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
as
so
opposed
I wrote a couple of big grants and didn't get funded. And then I really had not taught undergrads at Morehouse,
Morehouse,
but I
right.
hadn't taught graduate students, and so
yeah.
that was fun. I took over Jack's course for a year or two when I first
okay.
got here because she needed time to get some of her ethnographic work done.
Right.
And then I developed this other shorter 1-credit health disparities class for undergrads. And I had some projects left over that I hadn't finished from who knows when that I worked on. But I think the one best part of it was really the collaborative relationship that Jai and I developed, because I got to start working on some of her projects. And then we co-developed a couple of things. So the biggest one was this evaluation of the breastfeeding program that Kellogg was funding, 30 or 40 sites.
Right.
And they wanted to know if it was creating health equity. And at the time, Vijaya and I were working on some conceptual things that our 4P grew out of, but we were writing like looking at theoretical ideas and stuff for a while. So we were able to take these ideas around if we really had to look at health equity, what are the multiple dimensions that need to be considered? So we took that theoretical background and applied it to the Kellogg Foundation evaluation. So it was fun, you know, it was a chance to begin to apply stuff.
Right, and again, that was not a small evaluation. 30 to 40 sites, right? Like that's a substantive program to then be able to say.
And actually it was 5 different, we focused on there were several national organizations that had been funded, like the National Breastfeeding Committee, global, here, the North Carolina
Right,
Global
the Global
Breastfeeding
Breastfeeding
Institute was
Institute,
one of the sites, and then there were a couple of other academic places, and then, like Tulane had a big
Right.
site. And then there were there were priority states like Michigan and New Mexico and Mississippi, where we
Right.
spent a lot of time going to visit. Oh, and even prior to that, we did some work with the Michigan State Health Department. That was also a precursor, because they wanted to teach health equity to people in the MCH department. The director of Michigan is really a fantastic person. She's retired now. I'm blanking on her name, but they had been in a year-long program already, doing anti-racism work with their staff and teaching them about social determinants and health equity. And they wanted to have a series of learning labs with particularly the WIC division.
Right.
They chose to do it with WIC, so that they could learn how to reprogram some of their activities. So they actually addressed health equities.
Wow.
And so that was actually academic work, but it was with the state health department.
Right.
I loved it.
Right,
I was
because
like,
you can get your hands back into it, right?
Yeah. Back at the state in Virginia, I developed that jointly. We developed this learning lab, and a lot of R4P. Our first attempt to actually do R4P was to teach them how to use it and to come up with an activity that would grow out of their understanding of what it would take to develop
Right.
health equity.
Right.
So we translated that into the work that we're doing with the Kellogg Foundation and into the classroom. And
That must have just been such a fun project too, you know,